Welcome to Kiss and Chapters, where every story begins with a spark and ends with a swoon. If you love heart-fluttering romances, unexpected twists, and characters you'll root for, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I can keep bringing you more sweet, emotional, and unforgettable stories. Let's fall in love with every chapter, together. Chapter 1. The Punishment of the Goddess. If Yueyan had a coin for every time she got scolded by the heavenly court, she'd have a mountain taller than Mount Kunlun itself. But this time even she knew she'd gone too far. I was helping, she argued, hands on her hips, standing before the Jade Emperor's golden throne. They were so close. One gentle push, a sprinkle of moonlight, and boom, they're married with 3 kids. You meddled in a marriage that was not fated, Yueyan, the Emperor's voice echoed like a great bell. Your interference altered the mortal's life path, and now a great imbalance has begun. Yueyan pouted. But they're happy. Isn't that what love is about? The Jade Emperor's brows knitted. By his side, the stern matchmaker god Yulao shook his head, his red thread book glowing faintly. This is your final warning, Yulao said. You're not supposed to force the red threads. Love must be guided, not written by your whims. She rolled her eyes. Whims. She preferred to call it creative liberty. But the court had no appreciation for her style, and after a brief hushed consultation, the emperor stood once more. Yueyan, for your transgressions I sentence you to descend to the mortal realm. There you must successfully match 100 couples, each union made without force or magic. Only when you have succeeded may you return to your place as the goddess of love. What? Yueyan gasped. That's practically exile. Do not complain, the emperor said gravely. It is mercy considering the damage you've caused. Yueyan opened her mouth to protest but stopped when the emperor raised a hand. In a flash of light, her robes transformed, from shimmering celestial silk to the plain garments of a mortal woman. Her hair, once shining like starlight, darkened to a simple black braid. But wait. At least let me take my comb. My mirror. My perfume, she cried. But the magic was already pulling her downward. As the heavens blurred and disappeared, Yueyan groaned, Ugh, I hate dirt. When she opened her eyes, Yueyan found herself sprawled in the middle of a dusty village market. Mortals bustled past her, none giving her more than a glance. The air was thick with the scent of steamed buns, sweat, and dust, not exactly the fragrances of the heavenly palace. Lovely, she muttered, standing and brushing herself off. First day and I'm already filthy. Ah, you've arrived, mistress. Yueyan turned to find a short, sprightly man bowing deeply. His hair stood up like he'd been struck by lightning, and his clothes were as odd as his presence. A patched-up robe and a sash that read, Official Mortal Realm Guide. And you are? Yueyan asked, suspicious. Call me Bao. I'm your assistant assigned by Yulao himself. He beamed. I'll help you keep count of the couples, handle mortal money, and make sure you don't accidentally charm entire villages. How rude, Yueyan huffed. I am very subtle. Bao coughed into his sleeve, clearly unconvinced. Anyway, your first assignment awaits. With an excited flourish, he handed her a small scroll. She unrolled it and squinted at the painted image of a stern-faced man in dark robes, his long black hair tied back, a sword on his back. Legion. Age, unknown. Status. Mortal, suspected former immortal cultivator. Mission. Help him find his destined partner. Yueyan's lips curled in irritation. Hey, a cultivator? Why not start me off with a love-struck scholar or a lonely widow? Bao chuckled nervously. Well, Legion's case is special. He's trapped in the mortal realm just like you. And, rumor says no woman has ever caught his eye. Oh please, she scoffed, flipping her braid. He's just waiting for the right push. A goddess never fails. Finding Legion was easier said than done. It took 2 days of trudging through forests, up lonely mountain paths, and listening to villagers whisper about the cold immortal of East Peak. He lived alone, fought off bandits without drawing his sword, and spoke to no one unless absolutely necessary. By the 3rd evening, Yueyan stood before a crumbling temple atop a hill, vines coiling around its pillars. A faint flicker of candlelight shone through the cracks. That's him in there? She asked Bao, who nodded behind her. You sure you don't want to strategize first? Bao asked. Maybe approach him gently. Yueyan marched up to the door and knocked. Li Jin, open up. Your future wife is here. Bao face-bombed so hard he nearly toppled over. The door creaked open, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered man with midnight black hair and sharp, cold eyes that shimmered like ice under the moonlight. He looked Yueyan up and down, expression unreadable. Then he said, voice deep and commanding. Finally. You've come. Yueyan blinked. Li Jin's gaze locked with hers. You're the one I've been waiting for. My fated one. She gawked. Wait, hold on. That's not how this works. I'm the matchmaker. But Li Jin merely turned, walking back into the temple. Over his shoulder he called out. Then hurry. We've wasted enough time already. Yueyan stood frozen, mouth hanging open while Bao muttered beside her. Welp. This is going to be harder than I thought. Chapter 2. The Man Who Refuses to Be Matched. Yueyan stormed into the dusty temple, her braids swinging behind her like an angry cat's tail. Bao trailed nervously after her, his little legs scrambling to catch up. Excuse me, she snapped. You can't just declare someone your fated one and walk away. Li Jin didn't answer. He sat cross-legged before an altar, eyes closed as if deep in meditation. His sword rested on his knees, the aura around him cold and impenetrable. Yueyan huffed and stomped closer. I'm here to help you find your destined partner, she insisted. Not to be your partner. So stop with that nonsense. At that, Li Jin finally opened his eyes. They were dark and calm, but held a peculiar glint of certainty, like he was seeing through her. You carry the scent of the heavens, he said quietly. And I've waited too long to mistake it. What scent? I don't smell like anything. Yueyan sniffed herself. A little dust maybe, but otherwise nothing special. Bao whispered, actually you kinda still glow faintly under moonlight. Yueyan shot him a glare before turning back to Li Jin. Look, mister. I have a job to do and you are my first assignment. You need to fall in love with someone else. So tell me your preferences. Pretty, clever, gentle, savage? We'll get this over with quickly. Li Jin's gaze didn't waver. I don't need a partner. Then why am I here? He stood, sword in hand, towering over her. Yet instead of intimidation he seemed resigned. Because fate refuses to let me ascend until I fulfill a bond. That bond is with you. Yueyan opened her mouth to argue but paused. Send. Her eyes narrowed. You're an immortal cultivator who failed his tribulation, right? Li Jin nodded once. And you think that by being with me you'll succeed next time? That's the only conclusion I can reach, he said, tone flat. The heavens wouldn't send you otherwise. Yueyan snorted. Oh heavens. You're dense. I'm not here for you. I was sent here to match 100 couples. You're just number one on the list. Li Jin's lips quirked up, barely a smile, but there was amusement in his eyes. Then proceed. Proceed. Match me to someone else if you think you can. Yueyan clenched her fists. His confidence was maddening. She'd show him. She was the best at this. Fine. Challenge accepted. He poked his chest. I'll find you a woman so dazzling, so fitting, that you'll beg me to tie your red thread together. Li Jin shrugged. Try. And when I succeed, Yueyan declared, you'll stop calling me your fated one. Agreed. Yueyan turned on her heel, her pride blazing like a small sun. Bao caught up with her at the entrance. Mistress, Bao muttered. He might be a little tougher than our usual cases. I noticed, Yueyan gritted out. But I've never failed, Bao. I'll find his perfect match. Bao eyed her carefully. Sure. But, you seem a little too annoyed for someone who claims she doesn't care. Shut up, Bao. That night, Yueyan sat in a rundown inn, scribbling on parchment with furious energy. Let's see. He's cold, detached, lives in isolation. Probably needs someone warm and gentle to thaw that ice block of a heart. She jotted down traits, visualizing the perfect candidates. She'd ask around town tomorrow. Surely there were maidens, herbalists, scholars. Someone who'd fit. But as she wrote, her mind kept recalling his eyes, steady, unwavering. The way he said, you're the one I've been waiting for. She shook her head violently. Ugh, focus. Bao slurped his soup nearby, watching her with a knowing grin. You know, sometimes fate plays tricks. Maybe he's right. He's wrong, Yueyan snapped. I am not starring in my own story. I write the endings, I don't live them. But as she blew out the candle that night, a small, traitorous part of her wondered. What if, just maybe, she already had a thread tied to that cold, stubborn man? Chapter 4. Cupid's Dilemma. Chapter 3. The Cultivator's Curse. At sunrise, Yueyan marched straight to the village square, Bao jogging to keep up. She was armed with a list, a stubborn streak, and a determination to shut Li Jin's nonsense down. She stopped at every stall, every group of chatting women, every weaving circle. Are you single? Do you want to meet a tall, dark, brooding cultivator who owns a sword and a ruined temple? Well, how about you? The women giggled, shook their heads, or shuddered at the mention of the cold immortal of East Peak. He doesn't even talk to people, one woman said, shivering. He looks like he could freeze a river with one glance. Yueyan huffed. Hey, no appreciation for the strong and silent type. After hours of rejections, Yueyan flopped onto a stone bench, her enthusiasm sapped. Mortals are too picky. Bao patted her shoulder. Or maybe they're not charmed by the idea of courting someone who lives in a creepy temple and never smiles. Yueyan threw her head back with a groan. Fine. I'll go straight to the source. If Li Zhen wants a match, he needs to help me help him. By noon she was back at the temple, dusting off her robes as she barged in. All right, immortal ice cube. We're doing this my way. Li Zhen was meditating again, but his eyes opened the moment she entered. Persistent. Obviously. So answer me this. What's your type? Do you like gentle? Fierce? Bookish? Someone who makes soup? Someone who knows swordplay? Li Zhen stood slowly, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeves. I have no type. Yueyan glared. Unhelpful. He approached her, gaze steady. There's no need. I told you, I'm already certain it's you. Her heart did an awkward, tiny somersault, but she scowled to cover it. Stop saying that. Li Zhen looked away as if seeing a distant past. It was the last vision I saw before my failed tribulation. A woman bathed in moonlight, laughing at me. Yueyan blinked. You saw me. I didn't know who it was, he admitted. But now that you're here it makes sense. She crossed her arms, unimpressed. That sounds more like your unconscious fears playing tricks. Dreams during tribulation are messy. Perhaps, he said softly, but I've lived 100 years without a single mortal attachment. Then you appear, glowing with heavenly scent. Yueyan's cheeks warmed despite herself. She turned away. That still doesn't mean we're fated. You can't just claim me. Then find me someone better, he challenged again, voice calm but firm. Yueyan gritted her teeth. I will. Before she could storm off, her curiosity snagged her by the heel. She turned back. Why did your ascension fail? Li Zhen was quiet for a while. Then he sat back down before the altar, his fingers idly tracing the carvings on his sword. Because I hesitated. Yueyan raised a brow. You hesitate. You look like you don't even blink. At the peak of my tribulation I was shown loneliness. Lifetimes alone. And then a glimpse of a woman laughing, light surrounding her like a halo. For the first time in my life, I wondered if power was worth more than companionship. His voice was low, as if admitting a weakness. And in that moment of hesitation the lightning struck me down. I was cast back to the mortal realm. Power drained. Progress lost. Yueyan stared, lips parting slightly. She hadn't expected that. She thought he was just another stubborn cultivator who prioritized power. But here he was, someone who failed not because of greed but because of an aching loneliness he couldn't even admit to himself. I see, she whispered. Li Zhen looked up at her, expression unreadable. Do you pity me? He asked. She scoffed. I don't pity men with swords taller than me. Then a little gentler she added. But I think I understand. Li Zhen's eyes softened just a fraction. Good, he said. Then you'll see why I refuse to waste time with others. Yueyan groaned dramatically. You're exhausting. I'll be back with someone worthy of you. Don't sit there and brood yourself to death. Li Zhen's lips quirked. I'll be here. As Yueyan stomped off, Bao joined her, grinning. Admit it, Bao said, eyes twinkling. You like him. I'm working, Bao, she snapped. Aha. Yueyan tried to ignore the flutter in her chest and the ghost of Li Zhen's lonely confession. But as the sun dipped below the horizon she couldn't shake the sound of his voice. I hesitated, because I saw you. Chapter 4. Cupid's Dilemma. Yueyan should have been focused. She wanted to be focused. But every time she tried to imagine the perfect match for Li Zhen, her mind conjured the same image. The dark eyes like midnight. A mouth that almost smiled but never quite did. And a gaze that never looked away from her. She groaned and collapsed face first onto the inn's wooden table. This is absurd, she muttered into the wood. I can't be his match. I'm the matchmaker. Bao poked her arm. Mistress, you've rewritten destinies with a flick of your finger. Why is one grumpy cultivator suddenly so difficult? Yueyan rolled her head to the side, cheeks squished. Because he's stubborn. And Bao pressed. And because, she sat up scowling, every time I think about him I forget why I'm even doing this. Bao's eyes twinkled. Sounds like a crush. Yueyan pointed a warning finger at him. Don't start. Just saying, Bao said, hands raised. You've never been stuck like this before. She groaned again, but deep inside she knew Bao was right. Normally when faced with a challenge, Yueyan breezed through it. Mortals fell in love, hearts softened, red threads tied neatly. But with Li Zhen? His heart was like a locked door, and maddeningly the key kept looking like her. Determined to break the spell of her own thoughts, Yueyan spent the next few days searching for candidates. There was the beautiful healer with gentle hands and a kind smile. A clever scholar who recited poetry with a voice like velvet. A fierce sword maiden known across 3 provinces. Each time she dragged them up the mountain to meet Li Zhen. And each time he dismissed them with the same infuriating line. Not her. Even the sword maiden who nearly cleaved his door in half before challenging him to a duel, ended up storming off in frustration. Stubborn. Cold-hearted. I hope you rot up here alone, she had screamed. Yueyan slumped against the temple's outer wall, exhausted. Bao sat beside her, offering a stale bun. He's impossible, she muttered. I've never had a 0% success rate. Bao bit into his bun. Maybe the problem isn't him. She raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? Bao grinned. Maybe the problem is you, mistress. Maybe you're getting in your own way. Yueyan scoffed, but her heart trembled slightly. She was getting in her own way, wasn't she? The door creaked open and Li Zhen stepped out, hands behind his back, his dark robe fluttering slightly in the breeze. You've brought many, he said, looking down at her. But your heart isn't in it. Of course it is, she grumbled. No, he said quietly. You want to prove me wrong. Not because you believe there's someone else, but because you're afraid I'm right. Yueyan froze. The way he said it, like he wasn't just reading her mind but reading her soul. Don't flatter yourself, she snapped, standing up and dusting her skirt. You're not my type. Li Zhen tilted his head, genuinely curious. Then what is your type, goddess? She opened her mouth, and realized she didn't know the answer. She'd been busy tying red threads, writing others' love stories, meddling in destinies. But she'd never paused to wonder about her own. I don't have one, she muttered. Li Zhen's eyes crinkled, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen on him yet. Convenient. She wanted to argue, but before she could, the sky suddenly darkened, clouds gathering unnaturally fast. Bao looked up. That's not normal. A bolt of lightning cracked through the sky, and in the next moment, a figure descended, clad in shimmering silver, eyes like polished jade. A heavenly envoy. Yueyan groaned. Oh great. The envoy landed gracefully. Yueyan of the heavenly court. She crossed her arms. What now? The Jade Emperor sends a warning, the envoy said sternly. You were sent to complete your task, not to entangle your mortal heart. If you persist in this path, you risk losing your divinity forever. Bao gasped. Mistress. Yueyan's throat tightened. I'm not entangled. The envoy raised an eyebrow. Aren't you? You've matched no couples. You've only drawn closer to the man you were meant to guide. Be warned. Finish your task, or lose the heavens. With another flash of light, the envoy vanished, leaving the clouds to scatter. Silence settled around them. Li Zhen watched her carefully. They threaten you because of me. Yueyan swallowed hard. I don't care. Liar, he said softly. You're scared. She was. She had to finish her task. Return to the heavens. Resume her position. She wasn't supposed to feel this deeply. She wasn't supposed to want to stay. But when she looked at Li Zhen, her heart whispered a dangerous truth. I don't want to leave you. So she did what she always did when feelings got messy. She ran. Down the mountain. Away from his gaze. Away from the storm he stirred inside her. And she didn't stop running until the stars lit the sky. Alone, breathless, and undeniably tangled. Chapter 5. A Mortal's Festival. Yueyan didn't return to the temple for days. Instead, she wandered aimlessly, her guide Bao following quietly. She no longer stopped to match couples. No longer teased strangers or tugged at the strings of fate that only she could see. She simply walked. Away from Li Zhen, away from her task, away from herself. Bao finally spoke as they neared the outskirts of a bustling town. There's a festival tonight, he said, nudging her arm. The Moonlight Lantern Festival. A celebration of love. She didn't answer. There'll be dancing. Lanterns. Maybe a few mortals making wishes under the stars. Bao tried again, hopeful. It might cheer you up. Yueyan sighed. I'm not in the mood. But when they entered the town square, she couldn't help but pause. Strings of lanterns floated overhead like stars plucked from the sky. Stalls lined the streets, selling sweet rice cakes and warm wine. Couples wrote wishes on sky lanterns, sending them into the night. She smiled faintly. She had always loved mortal festivals. Bao perked up when he saw her smile. We can stay a bit, right? She nodded. Fine. Just for a little while. They drifted through the crowd, watching couples laugh and flirt. Yueyan's fingers itched with habit. She could almost see the red threads between them, glowing faintly in her eyes. She wondered if her own thread was still golden and intact, or if it had darkened because of her confusion. As they passed a stall of glowing paper lanterns, a deep, familiar voice murmured beside her ear. You shouldn't be here alone. Yueyan stiffened. He turned and there he was. Li Zhen. Dressed still in dark robes, but his hair loosely tied as if he'd left his mountain in haste. His presence was out of place among the colorful mortals, but he didn't care. His gaze was fixed solely on her. You, she stammered. How did you find me? I followed your scent, he said simply. Bao's jaw dropped. You can do that? Li Zhen ignored Bao entirely. His focus never wavered from Yueyan. You ran away. I had work to do, she muttered, though even she didn't believe her own excuse. You did no work, he said. You ran because of the envoy's warning. She bit her lip. Why are you here, Li Zhen? This isn't your kind of place. I came to find you, he said. You told me to wait. I waited. You didn't return. Yueyan's heart twisted. The image of him sitting alone in that crumbling temple, waiting in that endless patience of his, gnawed at her. Why me? She whispered. Why are you so sure? Li Zhen stepped closer, his voice low and steady. Because even when you're gone, the air remembers you. The wind carries your presence. And when I close my eyes, I see you, not as a goddess but as you. Yueyan's throat tightened. She hated how sincere he was. How sure? You'll lose nothing, she whispered bitterly. But I'll lose everything. Li Zhen's gaze softened. What is everything worth if you are lonely forever? The festival's drums picked up, couples starting to dance under the lantern light. A vendor nearby called for volunteers to join the dance circle. Yueyan's heart pounded. She wanted to run again, but her feet refused. Then shockingly, Li Zhen held out his hand. Dance with me, he said. Yueyan blinked. You dance? Do you even know how? I'll learn, he said, still holding his hand out. Teach me. She stared, her heart at war with itself. But slowly, hesitantly, she placed her hand in his. Bao squealed behind them, nearly fainting. Li Zhen's hand was warm, so unlike the cold aura he carried. He led her, clumsily at first, into the dance circle. The villagers chuckled seeing the stern man awkwardly trying to follow the steps, but Yueyan laughed for the first time in days. You're terrible at this, she teased. But you're laughing, he said. She smiled despite herself. The dance whirled them around, lantern light reflecting in their eyes. For a fleeting moment, surrounded by music and mortal warmth, Yueyan forgot the heavens, the envoy's warning, and even her task. She was just Yueyan, a woman dancing under the stars with a man who looked at her like she was the only light in his night. When the music ended, Li Zhen leaned close and whispered, No matter where you run, I'll find you. Yueyan's breath caught. Why? Because I'd rather fail 100 ascensions than lose you again. Before she could answer, a nearby vendor called for couples to send up a sky lantern together. Li Jin looked at her waiting. Without thinking, Yueyan took his hand again and walked toward the stall. They held the lantern together, her hands brushing his. She whispered a wish, though she knew gods didn't need them. Don't let me fall. But when she looked at Li Jin's steady gaze, she feared it was already too late. Chapter 6. The Heavenly Interference. For the first time since she descended, Yueyan didn't dream of the heavens. Instead she dreamt of Li Jin. His steady hand in hers. His clumsy steps turning graceful as they danced under the festival lights. His dark eyes watching her like he already knew she'd try to slip away again. When she woke up, the memory of his warmth still lingered on her skin. She sat up in the small inn room, Bao snoring nearby, and stared out the window at the sunrise. A new day, but the same growing confusion in her heart. I can't fall for him, she whispered to herself. I'm the matchmaker, not the matched. But the ache in her chest said otherwise. She didn't have time to linger on it, though, because a familiar sharp aura cut through the morning air. In the center of the village, standing tall and imperious, was a new heavenly envoy. But this one wasn't just a messenger. It was Yulao himself, the matchmaker god, the keeper of all red threads. He stood there in his crimson robe, eyes glowing faintly, holding his signature book of fate. Villagers gave him a wide berth, sensing the divine aura despite seeing only a distinguished red-clad man. Yueyan groaned internally. Of course. She climbed down from her room, Bao scurrying behind. When she reached the square, Yulao was already waiting, his gaze piercing though not unkind. Yueyan, he said. You've stalled long enough. She crossed her arms. I'm working on it. You've matched no one. She flinched but stood her ground. I've tried. But Li Jin, he's a tough case. Yulao's eyes narrowed. Because you refused to sever your growing thread with him. Yueyan froze. What thread? Yulao lifted his hand. In a shimmer of red light, a single faint thread glowed, barely visible but unmistakable. It stretched from Yueyan's chest, vanishing into the air. You've tied yourself to him, Yulao said quietly. Unconsciously, perhaps. But the bond is forming. No. Yueyan whispered, heart pounding. If it fully forms, you will no longer be fit to serve as the goddess of love, Yulao continued. You'll be mortal in heart and soul. You'll lose your immortality. Yueyan felt cold all over. She was supposed to return to the heavens, finish her task, prove herself. But her heart burned whenever she thought of Li Jin. The ache of his loneliness, his quiet certainty that she was the one. Yulao stepped closer. Sever the thread, Yueyan. No. Before it's too late. He swallowed. Can I? If I cut it, will he forget me? Yulao hesitated. Possibly. Or he'll remember and suffer. She remembered the way Li Jin had said, I'd rather fail 100 ascensions than lose you again. He'd suffer either way. I need time, she whispered. There is no time, Yulao said. The emperor grows impatient. The next time we meet you must have made your choice. With that he vanished, leaving only the faint shimmer of the thread still faintly tied to her heart. Bao stood by her side, silent for once. What do I do, Bao? She whispered, her voice trembling. I was supposed to help him, not fall with him. Bao sighed. Maybe the heavens need a new kind of matchmaker. She looked at him confused. You always helped others, Bao said softly. Maybe this time you need to help yourself. Yueyan wanted to laugh, but her throat was too tight. That night she found herself standing at the foot of East Peak again, staring up at the temple shrouded in mist. He climbed. Step by step, her heart screaming warnings, her mind whispering denials. Li Jin was already outside, as if waiting. The moonlight bathed him in silver, his hair loose, his expression unreadable. You came back, he said softly. She stared at him, her heart hammering in her chest. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. But you are. He stepped closer, so close she could see the flecks of silver in his dark eyes. They'll take everything from me, she said. Then let them, he murmured. I'll give you everything else. His hand lifted, hesitant, gentle, before resting against her cheek. Yueyan's walls crumbled. She closed the distance and kissed him. Soft at first, like testing forbidden waters. But when his arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, the kiss deepened, hungry, desperate, inevitable. The red thread between them flared, faint but burning brighter. Somewhere in the heavens Yueyao's book trembled. But Yueyan didn't care. Because for the first time in her immortal life, she wasn't writing a love story. She was living it. Chapter 7. The 50th Couple and a Revelation. Yueyan didn't remember how long she and Li Jin stayed in each other's arms that night. She only knew that when they finally parted, her heart was no longer her own. It was his. Entirely. Yet even as dawn painted the horizon, reality returned like a bitter wind. I still have to finish my task, Yueyan whispered against his shoulder. Li Jin brushed her hair back gently. Then finish it. I'll wait. His confidence made her chest ache. Would he still wait if she lost everything, her divinity, her immortality? She didn't ask. She wasn't brave enough. And so the next morning Yueyan made a decision. She couldn't sever her bond with him. But she could still finish her mission. For weeks she threw herself into matchmaking. She traveled from village to village, city to city, threading love between mortals. She guided shy scholars to bold maidens, arranged chance encounters between lonely herbalists and stoic hunters, even helped an old widower find love again. Couples bloomed like spring flowers under her hands. And yet every time she tied a thread she felt the gentle tug of her own, linking her to Li Jin. When she matched her 50th couple, Bao cheered, leaping with excitement. We're halfway there, he cried. Mistress, you're amazing. Yueyan smiled faintly. Halfway isn't enough. But deep down she knew the truth. Each couple she matched only made her thread to Li Jin stronger. Because each time she helped love blossom she thought of him. She'd never matched herself, but now her heart did it for her again and again. One evening while passing through a small riverside town, Yueyan visited a fortune-teller's stall out of curiosity. The old woman peered at her then frowned. Child, there's a golden thread in your heart. Yueyan blinked. You can see it? The old woman chuckled. Only those bound by fate themselves carry such a glow. But beware, it burns brighter the longer you deny it. Yueyan hesitated. What happens if it burns too bright? You'll lose what you once were. But you'll gain something no god can possess. And what is that? The woman smiled knowingly. A mortal heart. Yueyan left the stall in silence, the words echoing in her mind. A mortal heart. She was already halfway there, wasn't she? When she finally returned to East Peak, the temple was still quiet, but different. Li Jin was waiting by the old cherry tree outside, watching the valley below. His aura was calmer, steadier. You've grown stronger, Yueyan noted approaching. He nodded. Each time you return to me, I grow. She raised a brow. You're feeding off my visits? Li Jin chuckled softly. Not feeding. But it anchors me. My chi stabilizes. My soul doesn't drift. Yueyan's heart skipped. Because of me? Yes, he said simply. You're my tether. She laughed, shaking her head. You speak like we're some grand epic tale. Maybe we are, Li Jin said, gaze steady. But even if we're not, I'd choose you regardless. Yueyan's breath caught. She wanted to tell him everything. About the envoy's warnings, Yueyao's thread, her impending loss of divinity. But how could she? How could she burden him with the truth when his eyes looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered? Instead, she stepped closer and rested her forehead against his chest. I'm scared, she whispered. Li Jin wrapped his arms around her. Then let me be scared with you. For the first time, Yueyan let herself lean into him fully. Not as a goddess, not as a matchmaker, but as a woman in love. And the thread between them glowed brighter. Unseen by either of them, high above in the heavens, Yueyao sat before his book of fate. His fingers traced the thread connecting Yueyan and Li Jin, now a vibrant gold. He sighed deeply. So it's come to this. One of the minor gods beside him asked, shall we cut it? Yueyao shook his head. No. Some threads were never meant to be cut. And with that the red thread remained, stronger, brighter, unbreakable. Chapter 8, The Last Thread. By the time Yueyan matched her 99th couple, her name had spread across the provinces. People whispered about the mysterious matchmaker who always appeared when the lonely needed her most. But Yueyan didn't care for the praise or admiration. She only counted. One more. Just one more and she could return to the heavens. But when she stood before the last pair, a shy merchant's daughter and a wandering poet, her heart stilled. Because as she tied their red thread with practiced ease, the invisible thread linking her to Li Jun pulled tight. It was no longer faint. It burned, a golden cord stretched between her heart and his. She had no idea if finishing her task would return her to the skies, or tear her away from him forever. When she descended East Peak once again, Bao accompanied her, quiet but watchful. "Mistress," Bao said gently, "after the next couple your mission's done." Yueyan nodded, eyes fixed ahead. "You can go home." She nodded again. "But, will it still feel like home?" Yueyan stopped walking. Her heart squeezed painfully. "I don't know," she admitted. That evening Yueyan returned to the ruined temple. Li Jun was meditating under the cherry tree, petals fluttering around him like soft rain. When he opened his eyes he smiled faintly. "You're back." She stood before him, fists clenched. "I have one more couple to match." Li Jun nodded. "Then your task is almost done." She took a shaky breath. "And when it's done, I might not see you again." His smile faded. "Because you'll ascend?" he asked softly. She nodded. "And if I don't ascend I'll lose everything I am." Li Jun stood slowly, towering and steady, though his voice was quiet. "Then choose." Yueyan's heart trembled. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." His eyes didn't waver. "I'll never ask you to stay. But I'll be here, whether you return as a goddess or as a mortal." Yueyan looked up at him, her throat tight. "But if I stay, I'll forget the heavens. I'll forget who I was." Li Jun cupped her face gently. "Then remember this." He kissed her, deep, certain, reverent. As if he was imprinting his soul on hers. And the golden thread between them flared so bright, even mortals passing below the mountain paused, sensing something divine in the air. When they parted, Yueyan whispered, "What if I fall?" Li Jun smiled softly. "Then fall. I'll catch you." The next morning Yueyan returned to the village where her 100th couple awaited. But when she saw the pair, two stubborn childhood friends who couldn't admit their love, she hesitated. She held the red string but her hands shook. Bao whispered, "Mistress." She stared at the thread then closed her eyes. "I can't," she whispered. Bao gasped. "What?" She turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "If I finish this, I'll go back. And I'll never see him again." Bao swallowed hard. "But your immortality." "I'd rather have him." Without another word she dropped the thread. She turned on her heel and ran. Back to East Peak, back to the ruined temple, back to the man she loved. Li Jun was waiting, standing beneath the blooming cherry tree. She stumbled into his arms, breathless. "I didn't finish. I couldn't." He held her tightly. "So you've chosen." She nodded, tears spilling freely. "I choose you." At that moment the heavens roared, but no lightning struck. Instead a soft red glow surrounded them, and when Yueyan looked up, Yu Lao himself stood nearby, his expression unreadable. "You've defied the terms," Yu Lao said. "And yet, you've completed your greatest task." Yueyan blinked. "But I didn't match 100 couples." Yu Lao smiled faintly. "No. But you matched yourself. And that was the Emperor's true test." She stared in disbelief. "You've rewritten your fate, Yueyan," Yu Lao said. "You may ascend, or remain mortal. The choice is yours." He didn't hesitate. She gripped Li Jun's hand tightly. "I'll stay." Yu Lao nodded approvingly. "Then live well. As a woman. As a lover. And perhaps still as a matchmaker." With that he vanished, leaving only the cherry blossoms dancing in the wind. Li Jun kissed her temple. "You stayed." "I stayed," she whispered. Their golden thread pulsed between them, eternal, unbreakable. And somewhere in the quiet air of East Peak Yueyan's heart whispered, This is home." Bonus chapter, The Matchmaker's Inn. Years later, nestled halfway up East Peak, stood a quaint little inn built of warm wood and stone. Lanterns hung from its eaves and a painted wooden sign swung above the door. The Matchmaker's Inn. Where hearts find home. Inside, the scent of tea and sweet rice cakes wafted through the air. Travelers rested by the hearth while couples, old and new, shared quiet moments, their laughter mingling with the crackling fire. At the heart of the inn stood Yueyan, dressed in simple robes, her long braids still swinging like it had when she first descended. She moved between tables, offering gentle advice to shy suitors and teasing stubborn couples into confessing feelings. Bao, now slightly rounder, flitted about carrying tea trays and grinning at everyone. Another successful match, Bao chirped as a bashful couple exchanged hairpins by the window. Yueyan smiled. I've lost count now. Bao smirked. You've made more couples as a mortal than you ever did as a goddess. Because now I understand it, Yueyan said softly. Love isn't just tying threads. It's living it. The door creaked open and in walked Li Zhen, still as tall and imposing, but his once cold demeanor had warmed. His sword was strapped to his back, though he rarely used it anymore, unless some bandit was foolish enough to wander too close. He crossed the room and kissed Yueyan's cheek, earning playful whistles from Bao. Another matchmaking day? Li Zhen asked, his arm naturally winding around her waist. Of course, Yueyan beamed. But I save my best work for you. He raised a brow. I thought I was already matched. You are, she whispered, brushing her lips against his ear. But love is a lifetime's work. Li Zhen smiled, a rare, genuine one he only ever gave to her. Outside, the cherry tree Li Zhen once meditated under now stood proudly beside the inn in full bloom every year. Couples tied red threads to its branches, making wishes for enduring love. Some said the tree was blessed by the matchmaker goddess herself. And perhaps in a way it was. Because under those blossoms Yueyan and Li Zhen shared quiet evenings, sipping tea, their golden thread between them shining brighter than ever. They had written their own story. And every day they chose each other, again and again. Epilogue. The red thread eternal. Centuries passed. Mountains shifted, rivers carved new paths and villages turned into cities. Yet high up on the reclusive east peak, the matchmakers and still stood, worn by time but ever sturdy. Scholars and poets whispered that the inn was touched by the divine, for every couple who visited left with hearts inexplicably lighter. Some even claimed that the cherry tree beside the inn never withered, its blossoms forever blooming regardless of season. Few ever saw the couple who owned the inn, but the legend spoke of them. A woman with laughter like spring water, and a man with eyes dark as midnight but a gaze soft as dusk. They said he was once a cold cultivator who failed his ascension, until he found his fated one and chose her over immortality itself. One moonlit night, a wandering traveler arrived, seeking shelter. The hostess greeted him with a warm smile and led him inside. The traveler paused, sensing something oddly ageless about her. Forgive me, madam, he asked, but have you always lived here? She chuckled. Long enough to know that love changes shape but never fades. At the hearth, an old man with streaks of silver in his hair glanced over, his gaze still fixed on her with quiet devotion. The traveler marveled silently. He'd heard tales of gods and immortals, but never had he seen such love between mortals that felt eternal. Later that night, under the cherry tree, the woman sat beside the man, their fingers interlaced. They watched the lanterns from the city below float into the night sky. We've lived lifetimes here, she whispered. Li Zhen kissed her temple gently. And I'd live them all again if it means you're beside me. The golden thread between their hearts remained, unseen by mortals, but shining bright under the watchful stars. Somewhere far above, Yulao smiled as he watched the thread glow, unchanged by time. For not even the heavens could sever a bond that was fully chosen. And so the legend lived on. That the goddess of love walked among mortals, not in the sky, but in a quiet inn on East Peak. With the man she had once matched herself.